Hello, I'm Tristan. I really love Rocket League. It's one of my favourite games. I've actually clocked up over 1,000 hours on the game. And although I'm not the highest rank, I have hit Diamond 3 a few times. I think at the moment I'm in Diamond 1 on Rumble, which isn't the best. But yeah, I'm fairly good. And because some people say that the game is really hard, what I've done on my blog, and I'll put the link in the description to the blog post, is I've gone through and given some tips that I've picked up along the way. But what I wanted to do in this video is actually show you some of these tips. So when you launch the game, you'll be met with this. Obviously, you've got your challenges, and you can customize your car. In terms of playing, you've got the competitive rankings and the extra modes, and whilst that's really fun, I would say start off just with casual. I know some people disagree with that, but I would say, don't worry about your rankings or anything else to begin with. The first thing you need to do is just learn the basic controls. There's a few different controls you need to learn, so I would just start off with standard, or even free play over in the training here, and just run through some of this and just learn the controls, really. That to me is the most important. See what you're doing, learn how to jump, learn how to boost and move and everything else. Got my wrong controls, I can't really hit that now, can I? Yeah. I won't fire it off there. Right, so I would just literally play around and not worry about anything, just learn all the controls. But there is something you should know once you've mastered the basic controls is, whilst practice does make perfect, you should also learn rotation. Now, what rotating is instead of just constantly ball chasing, this comes into my second tip as well, instead of just constantly ball chasing and not worrying about anything else, you should realise that you're actually playing with other players a lot of the time. And obviously, if all you do is ball chase, that's not going to be very good, because if the enemy ends up, the opposition, not the enemy, sorry. If the opposition player starts getting the ball and going down the other end of the field, if your entire team is still stuck up the other end and no one's defending, then somebody's just going to come on and score. Obviously, not what I did there. So what rotation is all about, and I talk about it more on my blog, but rotation is all about basically ensuring that you know exactly where your team players are and adjusting your position accordingly. That is really important, and there's loads of YouTube videos showing this, so I won't repeat it.
What's going on,
It's a
guys?
really useful 10-minute video, for example, that really covers it better than I would. But the whole point is, you need to make sure that if you're playing 3 versus 3 and your team players are running up the field, you should rotate back and actually defend. That might sound obvious, but when you start out, a lot of people are just going to ball chase and run after the ball all the time, but you should actually try and be conscious of where everyone else is and be a good team player and rotate back. What I would say as well is, when you're first starting out, don't worry too much about rotating. I would spend 5-10 minutes watching YouTube videos on rotating, just so you're aware of it. But then beyond that, don't worry too much. If when you're in bronze and silver ranks, a lot of your teammates aren't actually going to be rotating at all, so don't worry too much about rotation. But the good thing with knowing about proper positioning, proper rotating, the good thing about knowing that is that when you start ranking up, you'll see your other teammates rotating, and then you'll be able to join in. So sometimes you'll run forward to attack and you'll see one of your teammates drop back to defend, and vice versa. And really then you're going to start winning a lot more matches than if you just randomly run around ball chasing. Because, there is a time and a place for chasing the ball, and it is fun, especially in casual, but certainly when you play in ranked matches, you really don't want to be ball chasing all the time. The other thing I would say is, when you first start off the game, you might be tempted to actually play with a keyboard controller, either with the arrow keys or WASD, but I would never recommend that. The reason for that is Rocket League is an e-sport. It's a bit like football, it's a bit like a racing game, and the joystick makes things so much easier than actually using the keyboard keys. If I actually just go back to free play now, if I was to try and use my keyboard, that didn't work. I don't actually know the controls here, but I'm dribbling now, but it's really actually difficult to adjust my position because, the arrow keys, or WASD, as you call it. What did I do there? I clicked the wrong button, sorry. But the arrow keys make it, or WASD, make it a lot harder to actually control the ball. Whereas if you actually jump over to a joystick, it's all a lot more natural. Your spins will be a lot better, and everything else will be a lot better, doesn't it? So I would always recommend getting a controller. I've got one here. It's by a company called Power A. It's not the official one. In other words, you don't have to spend a fortune, but what you should know is that any controller you buy, if you're on a computer, any controller should be a USB type controller, or sometimes they say it's Windows compatible. The reason that that's important is you can't just use like a PlayStation controller. You can't just use a PlayStation controller. You actually have to use one that's designed for Windows to actually plug into the USB port. But certainly the official ones are sometimes £60 or £70, whereas sometimes these unofficial third-party ones are like £10 to £15. So I tend to just use some third-party controller instead of the official ones, but it's really up to you if you do want to use an official controller instead. The next thing I would say is, once you've sort of learned the basic controls, when you're actually in a match or training or whatever, I would open up the settings menu and immediately jump over to camera. Now, there are loads of different camera settings. So this is the default view. What a lot of people find is that the default view isn't really ideal because you're a bit too close to the ball, and then that can make it a bit harder because you're not always going to see exactly where your teammates are, you're not exactly going to see where the ball is and where the enemy, well, you could say enemy, opposition players are, and that's not really ideal. So what you should probably look to do instead is adjust those camera settings. So back in the settings, you can see they've got other ones like balanced and wide angle and things like that. I always prefer more of a wide angle, which means the field of view, instead of being around 90, it's 110, and with other settings, because you do sort of see a little bit more, and I think that's always ideal. So certainly you could just go with whatever Rocket League recommends, and you can already see, I can see a lot more of the field now by simply adjusting that field of view back, and also just by using the defaults. But on my blog, I also mention there's a few different recommended camera settings, and I actually like things tweaked slightly. I think these settings are the ones that Squishy and a few other people use, so some really top players use. So I'll do the height of 100, the angle of -5, some people prefer -4. Stiffness I'll dial down a little bit. Swivel speed I'll make a bit slower, so it feels like I've got more control, and then transition speed I'll decrease as well. So these are the sort of settings I actually prefer. Camera shake as well, some people like that on, I don't, just because it seems to get in the way, so I turn that off. But these are the settings I use, and as you can see, you get a good level of field of view. If there's an enemy player coming in on the side there on the right, an opposition player, then you'll see them. Same with your teammates, you actually see where they are as well, and that's always good to know. So yeah, definitely look at the camera settings and the field of view settings, because I think the default ones just, I don't think they was good really. So that is something I would adjust quite early on, because if you're going to try getting used to, really it does take a little bit getting used to these camera settings. So the sooner you change them, the better, in my opinion. But unless you've got a really small screen, I would try for something wide angle. So certainly the settings I got here, and which I post on my blog, they're quite common and used by some of the best players in the world. But there are different lists out there. I'll put a link to this in the description. There's lists of what other people use. But what you will notice, that field of view, that first one, most people go for something, 110, which is the maximum. Barely anyone goes for 90, if I'm trying to look. Yeah, there's barely anyone, just one player there, that actually goes for the default of 90. Most people go for 110, which is the maximum. So do adjust your camera settings. And then really the next thing I would always do when I'm learning Rocket League is go through all of the tutorials. So where you go to play and training, you've got 2 tutorials, a basic and an advanced. I mean, the basic is very simple, and you're probably going to actually be, this is probably the first thing you're going to play after, installing the game. So you might have already gone through this. You can't even boost or anything like that. It's just going to teach you the basics. But I would definitely, go through all of these. Same as the advanced one is a bit better. You can actually teaches you some more advanced skills. Like side dodge is always really good when you do that. that's always really good to learn as well. But once you've gone through those basic, once you've gone through those basic trainings, I would then go through aerial, goalie and striker, not necessarily in one sitting, you could do it on different days, but I would go through these three and I would make sure I achieve the tick, which is above 80 or 90% on both rookie and pro. Now that's really important because pro might seem a bit tricky at times, and actually I haven't even bothered to complete it in this particular account. I changed my account a few months ago. I haven't actually gone through and maxed this one out. That was a rubbish shot. That's absolutely rubbish. But I think pro, while it might seem a bit too difficult, it does teach you really essential skills. I think if you can't regularly get above 80 or 90% in, you know, on the pro level ones, then you might struggle when you start getting to the higher ranks. You just certainly wouldn't be able to get to sort of Diamond 3 or Champion or anything like that if you actually weren't able to even hit pro on these ones. So don't worry about, you know, completing them all. I haven't even completed pro on this account, but don't worry about completing them on day one. You know, start off and make sure you achieve rookie on all of them. I haven't even done rookie there, but make sure you achieve rookie on all of them, and then in time, when you get a bit better, go through all the pros and make sure you get to at least pro level as well. Don't worry too much about the All-Star. It's always good to do if you can do them, but I wouldn't worry too much about them. I think being able to do pro means that immediately you might be able to get to sort of diamond or champion level, potentially. And then naturally, by actually playing real matches, you'll probably learn more skills with aerials, for example, than doing the All-Star trainings. But certainly going through both tutorials and then doing basic and pro on these, you know, is really important. But what you might also find is that in time, you might struggle with a particular part of your game. For example, if you're struggling with wall-to-air dribbles, for example, some people struggle with those. That's why at times. If you're struggling with those, I can't actually learn straight away now. Yeah. So I got the wrong key bindings there. But basically, you know, some people struggle with a particular part of the game. And in that case, there are loads of custom tutorials and trainings which help you. So for example, this will help you with wall-to-air dribbles. So you could come along if you know that that's a weak part of your game and play that, and that'll actually help you. Same as if you really want to learn the musty flick, then you know you've got custom training for that as well. And that's really useful to do because, you know, whilst these training courses are fairly useful, sometimes you want to just, you know, focus on one particular bit of your game, like improving your wall-to-air dribbles, in which case, you know, it's really good to have tutorials specifically for that. And then you can just jump into actual matches once you've improved, you know, that particular part of your game. The next thing I would say, and there's a bit of a debate about it, is there's two different camera modes. So you can see in the bottom left corner, you can't at the moment because my face is there, hello, but when you're playing it yourself, you can see there's two different camera modes. There's one called ball cam, which is what I've got on right now, and basically the camera is always pointing at the ball and I'm driving towards it, essentially. Cool. The other one is player cam, or car cam, where basically the camera is focusing on me and it actually doesn't care where the ball is. Now, don't worry too much about the camera modes to begin with. I'm just switching between it by pressing the little Y button. Don't worry too much to begin with about the different camera modes, but what you will find in time is that you will probably want to use both camera modes, because a lot of the time ball cam is what you'll want on, because it, you know, if you never actually know where the ball is, it can get really confusing. So I think most of the time you'll actually want the ball cam on, but then there are times where, let's say you're going to rotate back and somebody else is going to hit that ball, you might then want to switch to car cam and go and get some boost, go into your goal, and then, you know, now that you're defending, switch back to ball cam and you can see where the ball is again. So that's what I would say, is certainly as you get better at the game, you will probably learn to switch between the two camera modes as needed. And you will certainly see this if you ever watch other players. They will switch between both camera modes, not quite as much as I just did there because I was just testing something out, but yeah, that's something to know. But at first I would probably do whichever camera mode you prefer. Ball cam is sort of considered better than than car cam, but do whatever one you prefer, and then as you get a bit better, try experimenting with both and learn in a sort of a hybrid approach, so that if you ever do need to rotate back, you can just, you know, rotate back without worrying about, you know, it being in all cam mode, which could get annoying. So yeah, certainly learn those. The next thing I would say is, if you're really serious about the game, you know, there's only so much you can learn by playing other people, because, you know, you're always going to be playing somebody of a similar rank or difficulty to you, and you never, you know, unless you're really good naturally at the game, you're never really going to be able to see what a grand champion, you know, does on the match, you know, how they play. You're never really going to learn their tips. You're only ever going to see what other diamond players do or other silver players do, and you're never going to learn from the best. So what I would say is, it's really good sometimes, and I put some links in the blog, but I'll put them down in the description as well, is it's always really good to look at all of the Rocket League streamers. So Monkey Moon, who was the champion last year, he's offline at the moment, but, you know, he's got various streams. What Pop Clips was that? You know, he's got various streams showing what, you know, when he plays, you can actually watch exactly what he's doing. Same with people like Squishy. Squishy's got a really good YouTube channel and Twitch stream as well. Clearly not there. Squishy Muffins. Well, he's offline at the moment, isn't he? But he's got a good YouTube channel, I think, Squishy Muffins. But, you know, following some of the top players is brilliant. So this person actually has 15,000 hours of you know, gameplay. He's, you know, he's been sort of close to world champion at some point, and, you know, you can see all of his advice and his tips. Let me just skip this ad a sec. That's like 11 seconds of ads that I can't skip.
Yo, what is up, guys? Gonna be doing some
Cool. Yes, this is Squishy, and, you know, he's going to be here, for example, just showing you his gameplay.
Demo.
It's really, really awesome to actually see that, because oh, look at that goal. It's amazing. You know, but if you just, my point is, yeah, look at stream and YouTube. Don't worry about watching them obsessively. But if you are serious about Rocket League, you know, you need to see what the best players are doing and how they're doing it, because, you know, you don't want to just learn from other silver players. If you're in silver rank, you sometimes want to actually look at what the best players are doing and learn from them. And you know, slowly then you'll start to see why they're so good. You know, he's just demoed somebody and just done an amazing shot. You're not going to learn that if all you're doing is playing, you know, casual matches against lower ranked players. But what I would say with, you know, watching YouTube and Twitch streamers is, don't see it as a source of stress. You know, don't you know, obsess if you're not as good as these players, because I'm not as good as Squishy or Monkey Moon or anyone else, and I never will be. I'm not going to play the game as much as they do, and I don't have as much natural skill as they do. So it is good to watch these people. Just don't obsess about it or use it to stress yourself out, I guess I should say. The next thing I would say is, when you're actually playing a match, you can actually do replays. I don't know if you can do in free play. I don't really want to jump onto a live match, just because, yeah, you can't do it here. I don't want to jump onto a live match because it wouldn't be fair on someone if I then have to quit because I'm filming. But basically, when you're in a match, you can go to the menu and start recording a replay. And then at the end of the match, you can watch that replay, or it's saved down in your, I think it's your profile, and then replays. And you could basically come along and you can watch any of your replays. I've got loads of them there. I actually used to play it back in 2017, didn't I? But yeah, I've got loads of replays, and, you know, it might be that we lost, you know, 0-3, and I was interested in knowing why we lost, so I've got a replay of that. And then in the future, I can come along and actually watch the match and see exactly what I've done wrong. You know, so that is quite a useful thing to do. Again, don't worry too much. You don't want to, you know, watch the replay of every single match and obsess about everything you've done wrong, because that's just going to stress you out. But certainly saving the replays and looking at them, I think, is good from time to time, especially if you've got a match where you're playing really well, or a match where you're getting absolutely hammered, because then you can look back at the replay at some point and just, you know, figure out maybe what you could improve in the future. But yeah, don't let it stress you out. The other thing I would say is, again, if you're really into Rocket League, there's quite an active community on Reddit. Just reddit.com/r /Rocket League, simple enough. And on there, you've got the latest news. So a few days ago, the developer, shown all the different rewards you're going to get, which you wouldn't know if you're just, at the end of the season. And you wouldn't know that if you were just, constantly playing online matches here. I mean, I know there is a news box, but I don't think they, for example, here, they're actually not showing you the season rewards. So if there's any big news, you're probably going to find it out from Reddit before you're going to find it out from the game itself. You will also see some gameplay clips. Wow, that's a good goal. Look at that. Brilliant. You will see some amazing gameplay clips like you've seen there. And again, like I said about the YouTube and Twitch streamers, don't let these gameplay clips stress you out, because yes, they're absolutely brilliant. And for example, here, this is quite important to learn about wall-to-air dribbles. So it's good to watch these clips, but don't let it stress you out. If you're trying to do aerials and you're struggling with it, don't watch this and then suddenly become upset that you're not as good as this person, because this person has probably played the game forever, and it's not worth stressing about somebody else being better than you, I'd say. But certainly it is a good community. You've also got people asking questions, and then a lot of people, 39 people coming along and helping them. So if you're looking for any tips on how to improve your game, then, this is a good subreddit. And there are other ones as well. There's Rocket League School, that's got 45,000 members. That can also be a good one if you want to learn about getting better. You can post some clips here or give tips, and then people will come along and answer and help you. And that's, it's always good to have a community and follow these subreddits for news and also for inspiration and also to get help as well. Okay, in addition to following the subreddit, I just wanted to wrap up with some other gameplay tips. So the first one you should know about is something called fast aerials. On my blog, I mentioned this earlier, but I want to show it here instead. Fast aerials is all about, if you want to get up in the air. Well, that was actually fast aerial without me thinking about it. Fast aerials, if you want to get up in the air, if you just simply jump and then boost, it's actually quite slow to get up in the air. What fast aerial is all about is you actually press the A key and you go back like you do in there, but then you actually boost again and you do a double jump, and that actually helps you get in the air quicker, because there. So I've done it there, and you get in the air a lot quicker, because, as you know, from doing a double jump, you actually get a burst of power. So there we are, that's a double jump. That's also a double jump. Yes, you get that burst of power, and if you do that whilst your car is facing upwards, you actually get a boost of power. So that's worth knowing. The other gameplay tips I would say is use your boost wisely. I know I'm in training at the moment, so I've just got infinite boost, but you want to use it wisely. When you're doing an aerial, you don't want to constantly have boost on, because you might not have control. Sometimes it's actually better to tap the key and to use boost a bit less. The other thing I would say is, if there's a ball, remember about rotating. Can a teammate hit the ball before you? You don't want to just use all your boost and randomly hit the ball if, you're going to end up with 0 boost at the end and your teammate was planning on hitting the ball anyway. So you've got to, I'd say, just use boost wisely. The other thing I would say is when you come to defense, you don't want to hit the ball towards your own net ever as part of defending. So if the ball is moving towards your own net, when you come to defend, try not to hit it as though, try not to be ball chasing and running towards your own goal to actually try and save, because you might accidentally score an own goal. As part of proper rotation, there should always be a teammate back to defend. So ideally do that. Equally, try not to dribble or pull past your own net. If that was your own goal, you don't want to dribble or pull past your own net, because obviously an opposition player could then come along and actually score. It's always better to try and clear the ball well clear of your own goal, instead of just trying to slowly dribble it past your own net, because that's never a good idea. The other thing I would say, and I haven't got it here, but you've got quick chat. Now, it depends whether you're using it. No. Where is it? Quick chat. I haven't got it here. View change quick chat. There we are. You've got all your different quick chat options, yeah? And usually on a controller, you use this particular keypad to actually decide, to actually issue a quick chat command. And these can be really useful. For example, you've usually got informational ones that go straight to your team. I've got it, need boost, take the shot, defending. These are really useful if you're rotating. You could say, I'm going back to defend, or, take the shot, you go and attack. or you might actually be saying centering, for example. Equally, at kickoff time, you might want to say, I've got it, I'm gonna have it, or you go ahead and take the shot. And obviously, there's a load of other quick chats you can do as well. But I'd get very familiar with the chat options, and obviously you can adjust them as well. Like come to settings, chat, and then view change, quick chat. Adjust them as you would need, and then in a game, just learn which options come, which menu items correspond to which button click, because it is useful on a kickoff just to quickly say I've got it, or when you rotate in to quickly say I need boost, I'm going to defend. That's an important thing to learn. And I think that's pretty much it, actually. So I'm not the best of players, but I just wanted to go through all of these tips, and I've played the game for 1,000 hours, so I just want to go through all these tips because I love Rocket League. It's a really good game. There's a really good community, and I know there's slightly less players now than there was a couple of years ago, but it's still a good game in my opinion, and it can be good when you start leveling up and ranking up and learning more. It's a really good feeling. So I just wanted to write down my thoughts on tips on my blog, and also record this video just to show you these tips. I hope you found them useful, and happy Rocket Leaguing. Thanks for watching.